This is the Mount Washington Avalanche Center. We're going to go over our method for packaging a patient into one of our technical litters. A couple of the things we're going to cover in this demonstration is the hypo wrap that we use. It's slightly different from the classic burrito style that a lot of wilderness folks are taught. And then also our attachment method of the patient to the litter. We're assuming that this patient will be traveling through likely third-class terrain, although this system for attaching could be used for someone traveling through fourth-class terrain as well. A lot of terrain that we encounter up here and on the hiking trails around the area. So we're gonna start building our hypo wrap, and the first thing we do is bring our litter out. The hypo wrap usually comes packaged into the litter, but we've gone ahead and opened this ahead of time. So what we have here is a 19 by 5 foot wide sheet of plastic. We're going to drape it over the litter, and our measurement for where we're going to place it is if I fold the top end up, I'd like this to come roughly to right below where the patient's chin would be. So I think our layout is pretty good as is. Make sure it's centered side to side. In our hypo wrap kits, we have this sheet of plastic, 2 sleeping bags, and 2 wool blankets. Rather than using the sleeping bags as sleeping bags, we're going to use one below and one above the patient. So first thing we'll do is we'll lay one down. And before the patient gets in, we're going to start building our attachment system. So we're packaging the patient. Before we even have the patient get in, we're going to start making our chest harness. What we're doing is we're taking a 19-foot piece of 1-inch tubular webbing, creating a big loop in it, with the top of the loop going out over the head of the litter, and then our tails coming out over our side. The cross of the loop being roughly where the middle of the patient's back will go. Come on in, patient. So we're taking the loop, pulling it down over his head, taking our tails, feeding it up underneath, and we're going to go ahead and together just start to cinch this up. We want this cross piece to be roughly where the sternum strap of his backpack is, just a little above nipple line. So this chest harness is designed to prevent the patient from moving up in the litter at all. I also don't want this to cinch down on him at all during the journey downhill. So we're tying overhand knots in here to make sure this does not get any tighter. After the overhand knot, we're coming down to a vertical cross piece, roughly around his waist, and doing a full round turn around this vertical post. Now we'll start to tighten this together in unison, and then finishing this off, pinch it with one hand, and the other hand you can tie 3 half hitches with the tail of your webbing. This 19-foot piece of webbing, it's long enough to do the biggest patient, but you'll always have a bit of a tail. We just tuck the tails down beside his leg. So taking the tail of this, we're now coming down to a vertical post in the litter, and doing a full round turn around this post. Go ahead and in unison with both sides, tighten this up a little until it feels snug. With one hand, pinch the round turn to hold it in place, and then your other hand, 3 half hitches to close the system. Tail will be a bit long, and we just tuck that beside the patient's leg. So that's our chest harness, keeping the patient from sliding up. We also need to make sure the patient doesn't slide down at all. probably the more likely scenario, as we'll always try to keep the feet lower than the head. We have a second piece of 19-foot long nylon webbing. We do the same length for the two pieces, just so they're interchangeable, less numbers to keep track of. So find the midpoint, we'll pass his under his knees. Midpoint stays in the middle. I'll reach through, grab a tail. And go ahead and work with your patient a little bit just to make this comfortable for them. But we're going to go ahead and snug this up.
Good, Mark?
Yep.
And this is pretty important to get pretty snug and work with your patient on getting this comfortable. We've found that if this is not snug, the patient will end up shifting down a little bit. But essentially you're doing the same thing as you did with your chest harness. We're doing overhand knots to set this in place so it doesn't tighten on him through the rest of the journey downhill. And again, work at the same speed as your partner, just so things stay even on both sides. And now we're taking the tails and bringing them to another vertical post. Again, aiming for the same one, looks like right underneath his armpits. And same attachment as the chest harness. We're doing a round turn around these vertical posts. And again, work in unison to go ahead and snug this system up. That comfortable for you, Mark?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right, pinch your round turn, and again, 3 half hitches. And then we just tuck our tails down into the litter. So one reason we've gone with this 19 by 5 foot piece of plastic for our hypo wrap is it allows us to attach him with our harness system to the litter, and we can still access points of him. The old burrito style wrap makes it a bit tougher to get our patient attachment system in there. So we've done this 19 by 5 foot and we found that it makes a really nice total system together. Before we continue, we do like to be able to give the patient a way to take his weight off of his waist harness. And so what we're going to do is create a foot stirrup for him to be able to basically stand up on. If he's got an injured leg, choose an uninjured leg. If he's got both fine legs and there's a different injury, just choose one foot and go. So we're creating our foot stirrup out of a 10-foot length piece of tubular webbing. We've gone ahead, found the midpoint, tied an overhand knot, just bigger than his boot. I don't like a cinching knot here because sometimes if softer boot, the patient will end up finding some pinch points. For the far side, I like to go under his knee so that we're not pressing down on top of this. And similar to the chest and harness system, we're going to a vertical post on this litter and the exact same attachment system. A full round turn followed by 3 half hitches. We do have the patient bend his knee while we're tying this so that when he straightens out, he kind of does take some load off. We found that if he raises this foot to roughly his heel, or excuse me, his ankle, we gain about the right amount. Pretty close?
Yeah.
Mark, can you go ahead and straighten that leg? See if you can take some weight off your harness.
Absolutely.
Awesome, that looks great. So at this point, we've got our patient secured to the litter with a chest harness, a waist harness, and then we've given him some comfort with this foot stirrup. It's at this time where we're going to do any last minute things to the patient before we package him up for our full transport downhill. So any last minute padding, we have the second wool blanket. We could, Mark, if you want to put your arms down, we can prevent his head from flying around a little bit. And then we also have the second sleeping bag, which again, we're using just as a blanket drape over him. One reason we're doing this rather than putting him inside the sleeping bag is this whole system is designed to give us access to any point of the patient that we need to during the journey with minimal undoing of this package. So once we've got this final sleeping bag, let's go ahead and pull this piece of plastic up. If we need to, we can roll down a little bit just to create space underneath his chin, and then tuck in around all the edges, sealing our package. So you can't create a perfect seal just because you're going to be dealing with your harness system that you rigged, but you're looking for as good as you can get, and tucking this plastic in, you can do a great job. So we've taken our top piece of plastic and we've rolled it down. What we're going to do is create a tent over our patient's head. As we have this extra long piece of plastic, we can create this rigidity here with just the roll rather than having to add a sand splint or some other material in here. And conditions depending how close you want this seal to be. The idea is to keep stuff out of our patient's face. So finishing the system, we have these external lashings on the litter, and this is going to bundle our whole package together. And again, demonstrating the whole reason we do this harness system, this packaging system, is if I've got a leg injury and I need to make sure that we're not losing CSMs in his foot, I've got access to his foot right there. If I had to boot off, I can get pedal pulses. If we've got an arm injury, I can get in here really quick and I have access to his arms. So we can go ahead and track vitals on our way down with minimal opening of this whole package.